American males, American males, American males, American males, American males, American males, American males. You got to go up at the end of the line, you know.
This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
I give you the best band in rock and roll history. I give you 3 counts.
Somebody call my mama.
Talk about getting down with the good foot.
Well, dance to that, brother.
Move it up. Move it up.
Grab your plunder and open the pay window. It's time for Survey Says.
Tonight, we welcome you for the fifth time to Survey Says, a WCW retrospective. This time, we are going to get all up in your area as we celebrate the music of WCW. But we're already up in Tim's area as this show brings us to Norfolk, Virginia, inside the famous Norfolk Scope. My name's Andy Savage, and as always, I'm joined by my tag team partner, Tim Capel. How you doing tonight, buddy?
Andy, I am most excellent here tonight. I wondered what venue exactly we would be hailing from here tonight. Wondered if it might be Music City, USA, given the topic of tonight's show. But in my own backyard of the Norfolk Scope, I can roll with that. It's not too terribly far from me and not a site that we have visited previously. So sounds like good times are upon us here.
Yes. Hopefully this is going to be a good show, and we have a great guest with us as well. I guess I will introduce him now. I've actually been on his podcast several times, and he's been a longtime friend. So, Glenn Butler, welcome to Survey Says.
Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you very much, Tim. I am glad to be here. It's a little unexpected. You know, if you told me 6 months or a year ago that I would be on a dedicated WCW podcast, that would seem a little strange to me because it's not really ever been my bag, really. But we'll get into that, I think.
I'm surprised it's taken us this long to have you on, it being the great WCW fan that you are, as a longtime close personal friend of Andy and myself.
Yeah, well, there's an amount that you pick up just by osmosis, right?
One would hope, yes, definitely. I'm sorry, not to step on your toes, Andy, but I would be remiss in not pointing out that, Glenn, you have stated on previous Place to Be Nation podcasts, I don't want to hit my P's too hard there,
Please.
that you have described the main event of WrestleMania 9, the Hulk Hogan versus Yokozuna WWF Championship match, as good but not great, I believe. Is that an accurate statement?
Oh, have I jumped right into the deep end here? Is this what you guys brought me on to answer for?
No, absolutely not. I just want our listeners and our audience to be properly calibrated in terms of their expectations for this episode. And I do want to ask you right off the bat, in terms of the Sting versus Hollywood Hogan match at Starrcade 97, would you describe that as good or great?
I wouldn't really describe anything Hulk Hogan did in WCW as great. You know, okay.
Oh, God.
Other than perhaps the time that he observed that there are no Hulkamaniacs here when he, arrived in the Dungeon of Doom, or whatever that was, or the dark side of Hulkamania in the early days of Nitro. But you have hit on a bit of a sticky point for me in the last, oh goodness, what's it been, a year and a half since
Already.
we learned the extent of Hulk Hogan's white supremacy?
Yes, I know that you may approach Hulk Hogan / Hollywood Hogan / Terry Bollea with somewhat mixed feelings in light of these revelations.
Yes, well, just as context for listeners who aren't familiar, my feeling before had always been that Hulk Hogan was the unsurpassed and unsurpassable greatest performer, wrestler, worker in the history of professional wrestling because of all of the fantastic matches that he, was the main drawing force for in terms of economics and in terms of just aesthetically the construction of the show. And this ran into a little bit of a wall when, for more ethical reasons, I kind of had to back off of Hulk Hogan a lot. And, to an extent, it gives you a different perspective, Because who cares if he had some good wrestling matches if he's a terrible human being?
I was going to say, you used the term ethics, and we are a wrestling podcast, so I feel like these concepts are somewhat at odds. So, but I do understand where you're coming from, and I did want to at least get that out there, again, for the benefit of our growing listening audience. As it seems.
So in the context of the Hogan Yokozuna match at WrestleMania 9, the reason I called it good but not great is because you obviously can't call it great. It's not much of a match on that level. But at the end of the day, getting the title back on Hulk Hogan in that era is never really going to be a bad thing. Especially over Yokozuna and especially over Bret Hart, with whom I got a bit of a thing.
We really didn't bring you on the show to answer for that. I think your views are probably shared by many and are uncontroversial. And you wouldn't be too far out on a limb by calling that match great. I think it's one of the better WrestleMania main events, certainly by any measure.
Really, rank it for me. Give a quick ranking. We talking top 5, top 10?
Probably top 6, I would say.
Wow.
All right. So, Andy, let's turn it back over to you, sir. I just wanted to get into that with Glenn a little bit. And hopefully that provides a little bit of a segue at least. If not, I don't want to go off format too much. I mean, this is a WCW podcast after all.
And we don't really even have a format, really.
No, we consistently throw the format sheet out the window.
Rewrite as the show's going on, guys. It's WCW time.
That's what we do.
Although that's what we do, though, in the first half of these shows now, is when we invite someone on, we like to know their history, how they came to watch wrestling. So even though you might not have actually watched WCW, it's still kind of cool to get your opinion, maybe post-WCW.
Well, my brother had been a huge Hulkamaniac back in the 80s. He fell out in the very early 90s, around the time Hulk Hogan lost the title. And he started to get back in the summer of 2005, and I had never been into wrestling at all. Part of the reason why I can't really hold truck with Hogan and WCW and can't really hold truck with Bret Hart as a main eventer, at least, is because I was never a fan in the 90s, and once I became a fan, I didn't particularly like the Attitude Era, and especially the mid 90s, that whole kind of doldrums before the Attitude stuff, was never really what attracted me to wrestling. Now, since I eventually became a wrestling fan anyway, I think I might as well have watched in the 90s and had a few more friends in middle school who all had their Steve Austin t-shirts, but that's neither here nor there. So he started getting back into it in 2005, and the first show that he showed me to try to hook me on it was WrestleMania 4, which you might not think of as a show to really hook someone on wrestling. But
the fuck was Scott thinking?
he loves that show, man. Loves it. And so we went from there. We had VHS tapes that he had recorded when he was a kid of the early WrestleManias and the early SummerSlams and a couple Rumbles. And so we watched those. We started downloading stuff, and at the same time we started watching the current product on TV. Now, we didn't have cable at this time, but we did have over the air UPN. And so the current product we started watching was like July-ish 2005 SmackDown.
Oh, so when it was Hogan and Shawn Michaels kind of teaming up and then feuding and stuff, was that? Or was that on Raw, I think?
That was on Raw. I remember we were at our parents' house and we were watching the 4th of July Raw. And so we saw the Shawn Michaels heel turn, and I kind of followed some of that, whenever I was at a friend's house or someplace who was also interested, who had cable. But I vividly remember the first current era, I mean, over 10 years ago now, but the first current era show I ever saw was an episode of SmackDown with, I think it was a fatal 4-way match to decide the new SmackDown champion after John Cena had been drafted to Raw.
Oh,
and
my
JBL
goodness.
won this fatal 4-way, and Teddy Long came out and captured my love forever. Teddy Long came out and told JBL that, playa, you do not have the new SmackDown championship, but you are the number 1 contender to SmackDown's last draft pick. And Batista came out and laid him out, and immediately Batista was the man. And so when I started coming online and talking with you guys and other people on various places, I kind of had a kind of a skewed perspective, because they were analyzing, how are the pushes for Cena and Batista working? Are they selling them as the top guys? But meanwhile, I came in and just first principles is Cena's the man, Batista's the man. They are solid. They're the best. Because that's how they were presented the first time that I saw any of this stuff.
Which is exactly what you're probably supposed to be thinking as a loyal WWE viewer circa summer of 2005. Which, credit to them for pulling that off and succeeding in their mission statement at that time period.
I'm trying to circle back to WCW because I realized the premise of your show. I never watched any WCW while the company existed. I came in long after it was dead and dusted, but I kind of absorbed this attitude that, well, no pun intended, that WCW was always shit and they only ever screwed everything up. The kind of narrative you see in WWE DVDs of the time.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
I know. And so it's been a little bit of a journey.
Well, thank you, Glenn Butler. You've been a great guest. This brings a close to our 5th episode of WCW Survey Says. Come back next month for more great. Yeah, I like Andy. I am definitely interested on your sort of post-mortem opinion on WCW, considering you only encountered the product when it was a good 4 to 5 years into the grave. So please continue your narrative, sir.
Well, I've seen a lot more of it since the network started. Obviously paying for a service that has so much of it online. I've seen a little more of that. I've seen some more of the kind of consensus best matches when one of the writers for Place to Be Nation did a list of his top 500 matches of the 90s recently, and I would go through that list, and there's a lot of lucha, and there's a lot of puro, and a lot of stuff that isn't like very easily accessed. But I would kind of skim through and see some of the ones that were on the network that I hadn't seen. And so there were a bunch of WCW matches, a bunch of pay-per-view matches from '94. I know that whole year before Hogan came in is highly acclaimed. So there were several of those that I saw. Some of the highlights from Nitro. I've seen some other highlights here and there. I tried to watch Nitro for a while, starting at the beginning. I kind of ran aground when it went to 2 hours. I didn't really I didn't really continue making the time to keep up with it at that point.
But you did make time for the 1 hour Nitros?
Yeah, well, I find a 1 hour show is always more easily digestible,
That is true. I'm just thinking more in terms of the content that they used to fill that 1 hour, which was a little...
Well, that's true. The last several months of the 1 hour Nitros are not the best. There is a whole lot of the booty man.
There sure is.
There's a whole lot of the Booty Man, but it was always saved by Ric Flair's buffet table on the entranceway. That Big Show would always chokeslam someone through that table by the end of the night. Didn't matter. It might be Luger, it might be Flair, it might be Savage. Somebody's going through that before the end of the night. And yet Flair always had it back the next week. It was great.
Yeah. He was on top of that.
But yeah, I mean, I've seen highlights. I watched one of the Rey Mysterio DVDs that had a lot of his highlight matches from, 96, 97, 98. His matches with, Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero and all that stuff is great.
Which you're probably sick of hearing about.
Well, I know you just covered all that on your previous episode with
Exactly.
with Mr. Steve Willie, a good and dear friend and an insightful gentleman. So I won't step on any of those toes. I don't really have anything intelligent to add there. But so I can't really offer kind of an in-depth, detailed perspective on this stuff, but I have kind of a general view, and I've been filling that general view in a little more as time has gone by on a pretty weird journey. And one of the best things that I've seen in a long time was brought up by that top 500 list, and that was the series of matches between Vader and the Big Boss Man in WCW, who was cycling through a few different aliases, but what was it, that biker gang, the Angels or whatever he was in for a while.
Guardian Angel.
He was the boss. He was
the boss, yes.
A big boss, man. Then, of course, the Guardian Angel, as you said, Andy.
Guardian Angel. That's what it was. Yes.
WCW's audience at the time, I'm not sure how familiar they would have been with the real life precedent for this angle, but so be it. Then, didn't he go back to being?
Oh no, I think there was like a video on one of those pay-per-views or something. There was a video package kind of highlighting the Guardian Angels, and they're kind of like I don't know if it's like Make a Difference Fatu or something, where he was like
well, kind of
in the city, like cleaning up graffiti with kids and stuff, and he had
like
a beret on.
There was a whole thing where he actually was like officially inducted as a member of the Guardian Angels, I want to say, which I don't know how kayfabe versus real life that really was, but I certainly am not an authority on the Guardian Angels and their hierarchical structure, such as it is. But after that, did he go back to being Big Bubber for a while?
Yeah, that's when I guess he went heel.
And then he was just simply Ray Traylor when he was on the outs with the NWO. So, Jesus God, we're getting off topic here.
Let's bring it back to Glenn because we're kind of leaving him out of this. You said that those matches stood out to you. They kind of were exciting.
The Vader Bossman matches, yes, very much. That's really some of the best stuff I've seen from Vader.
Bossman, I'm not familiar with this. No, sorry, keep going.
I got to keep up my gimmick, brother.
Very good. Very good.
So yeah, those matches were really, really impressive. Just the amount of clubbering going on, Tony. It was just great how they presented it as such a clash of the Titans. That is exactly what you'd want from a match between those two. They didn't, try to slow it down and do a bunch of bullshit holds or anything. It was just, hard hitting slams. And
that's exactly what you're into as a wrestling fan, I take it, right?
It's one of the things that I'm into. Yeah. I can go for like an extreme of a few different styles, but that's one of them that is just that really hits the spot sometimes.
Yeah, like the Hoss matches.
The Hoss battle, yes, exactly.
Well, then, being as you watched in like 2005 was your kind of starting point, and Booker T was around, and like Chavo. Have you seen any of their earlier WCW stuff versus when they were actually WWE performers?
A little bit. I've seen a few Harlem Heat matches on those early Nitros and a couple of the pay-per-views that I watched. And Chavo, very little. I'm not going to go out of my way to track down a Chavo Guerrero match, you know?
Again, many of us would share that sentiment, I'm sure.
Have you attended any live events, be in WWE or otherwise, like Ring of Honor, anything like that?
Yeah, I saw a few WWE shows. I've gone to several pay-per-views over the last 10 years, I suppose. You know, a couple of SummerSlams, a Survivor Series. Most of the time when they're up in the Northeast, and they come through the Northeast pretty regularly. I mean, it's still somewhat of their home territory. You know, they're always going to have a show or two in Boston every year. They're always going to have some shows in New York. I went to SummerSlam this year, which was quite a thing in many ways.
Yeah, because didn't you meet up? I think you've met up with some of the Place to Be guys, like Steve, right?
Yes. I have thus far had the great pleasure of meeting Steve Willie in person, in the flesh, twice. At SummerSlam this year, and last year I went to the Ring of Honor show the night before SummerSlam, also in Brooklyn. So, you know, I've been to a few WWE shows. I after a while, I swore off WWE TV tapings because the live arena experience for like an episode of Raw is not rewarding.
Yeah, isn't a lot of start and stops with commercial breaks and things like
the commercial breaks, the video packages, the backstage scenes, it's just not rewarding as a live experience. The last episode of Raw I went to was the 15th anniversary they had in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and that was, circling back around a little, the one time in my life I got to see Hulk Hogan live in person.
Oh, wow. Cool.
When he rescued Hornswoggle from the Great Khali. So that whole segment was made for me.
It really was. Wow.
Speaking of Hornswoggle, I just had this thought. Wasn't it, you were actually on camera at a Royal Rumble, wasn't it, when he was in the Rumble?
Oh, man, barely. I found one frame where you could make out my brother and myself, basically because my brother is a very large person. He's very tall and just a very large person, and so you can kind of pick him out in the crowd because he looks bigger than everyone else in the row in the arena. So you could just barely make us out, and we were both like applauding like hell as Hornswoggle is going up for the tadpole splash. Best finisher in the biz.
I thought I remembered
What a
that.
time to be alive.
Indeed. But yeah, I wound up going to a few other shows as well. I went to a few Ring of Honor shows when they've come through New York, and one time in Danbury, Connecticut, which was strikingly different because they're going to pull out a lot of the big guns for a New York show that they're not really going to for Danbury, Connecticut at the police gym, you know? Sure. I think the one in Connecticut was actually a tournament for the tag titles. So there were some pretty good teams represented there, especially in retrospect since they're all main eventing in WWE now. But that's neither here nor there. And just recently, thanks to the aforementioned Steve Willie, I've gotten into Chikara a bit. And so they had one show here in the great state of Connecticut in 2015, and they're going to have another one this coming March, I believe. So that is, as a live experience, just awesome. Andy, I know you've been to a couple of shows of theirs.
Yeah, that's one thing that I forgot that I didn't mention on the last show with Steve was that we went to Shikara, and we were like front row at this one show. It was at a really weird theater kind of thing. You had to go upstairs kind of. It was like a ballroom, I guess. But anyways, we were in the corner. I'm actually on camera in this really bizarre like tag team match, like the most bizarre but the coolest experience I've ever had at a wrestling event. It was like a 4-team match, and I think there was like a basketball player guy teamed up with a football player, and then
Mr. Touchdown.
Yeah, on the Colony, I think they were the Ant guys, and then
yes.
another team. I forget who the third team was, but the fourth team was this guy who was in Ring of Honor, and he's been in Shikara under different names. And then I guess in between the shows that we saw, he was one guy in the spring. He was like mixed martial Archie. I think he was an MMA guy. But then by the next show, he had since lost like a loser leave town match. So he came back under a mask, and he was the mask and handsome stranger. So he's taking like I think Dusty Rhodes' old his mask gimmick thing. He's supposed to be like a cowboy guy, but he had a bird, a little plastic bird named Sapphire, right? And that was his tag team partner. It was so bizarre.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I just love the character construction and the storyline development in Shikara, and they do have a knack for running in unique venues. The show I went to in Connecticut in 2015 was in the like banquet hall, convention hall of an arcade.
Oh wow.
And so in line, waiting to get into the actual show, we were going through all of the, skeet ball machines and all the video games and everything in the arcade. So that was a really unique experience for a wrestling show.
I have never experienced a convention hall combined with an arcade, but it's something that I feel like I want in my life in the worst way.
Well,
maybe that's a Northeast thing. Me, I'm kind of straddling the line where I'm on the East Coast, but Virginia is traditionally considered a southern state, more or less, except for the few counties up north. So maybe that's something I've just missed the boat on, because that's something that I cannot conceive in my mind, but I want so very badly.
Well, I think it's rare enough for an arcade to still exist, right?
We have something that's kind of cool downtown here in Peoria that's been open for about a year now. It's called the 8-Bit Beercade, and there's like, I guess all the old arcade games are free, but they kind of have kind of upper price craft beer, so you're paying a little bit more, but you can play like, Pac-Man, and there's even like an X-Men game, and there's like a bunch of shooting games and stuff, so it's pretty cool.
Okay, I have a theory about this, Andy, and again, you can edit this out of the show proper, but I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there. I think because you live in the Midwest and in a very landlocked state, you don't have things like beaches and beaches. You have to kind of go out of your way to find entertainment. You get pretty creative in terms of what you're willing to put out there and what people are willing to pay money for. And certainly if I lived in East Peoria, Illinois, as you do, I would be fucking all over this, which you have just described, because it sounds like something that I need to do on a Friday/Saturday night for certain. And I'm not saying that derisively at all. I'm not being sarcastic as I often am. This is me being really sincere and genuine, actually.
I actually want to get there more often than I have been, because I said it's only been open like a year, and I've been there like 3 times, I think. In fact, I went there before our second episode. It is kind of something like how you're saying. We're in the Midwest, and there's really not a whole lot going on. We either have to like travel like a couple hours north to Chicago or a couple hours south to St. Louis to really have kind of some fun things.
Yeah, I was trying to say that without coming off as douchey, which I think is a real risk that we run sometimes, being in different geographic regions as we are. So I hope I got that across. But I mean, it sounds, like I said, pretty phenomenal.
I understood what you meant, because I think Glenn's even said he's just like a train ride away from like New York, and like it's kind of like a closer area, right? Everything's really close together.
Yeah, well, I live in Connecticut, which is basically the New York suburbs. Well, except for it's kind of split in half, right? If you draw a diagonal line across the state of Connecticut, you can separate the New York suburbs and the Boston suburbs. And of course, the Boston suburbs subsumes the entirety of Rhode Island. So I am where I happen to live, just like a 1 hour train ride away from New York City, or a 3, 4, 5 hour drive to Boston. So I have, both of those pretty well in hand if there's something I want to go to. So meanwhile, I'm ensconced in my suburban elitist cave.
You're an elitist East Coaster.
I am a Northeast coastal elitist. Yes.
As am I, although not quite Northeast. More.
Well, sometimes I try to get better.
Yeah. Well, I'm more Mid-Atlantic, so I can kind of hide within that veil, so to speak. So, but anyway, we should get back.
That's true. We can partition ourselves by wrestling territories. You are squarely Mid-Atlantic. I'm WWF, and Andy's in the AWA.
Quite so. That's a great observation. We should get back to the show proper. So Andy, what have we got going on here? We're assuming there's not anything else you would like to learn about Glenn's background. We are going to be talking wrestling theme songs with, we would like to think, an emphasis on WCW theme songs, but we're going to do kind of a round robin type of approach to this. Is that right?
Yeah, I have some themes kind of laid out and like hand-picked that I want to sample from, but actually, before we get into that, well, I have a list of shout-outs to give, and I would actually like to throw a few out to my AWA regional friend. His name is Kurt Kilberg, and I have to give him contractually obligated shout-outs. And since I didn't do any, actually, I failed in my obligations on the last show, I'm going to double up on this show. So
You're in breach of contract.
Yeah, but I'm trying to make good on it, right? So I don't...
I was going to say, you always give me shit for talking about the brief period in WCW where Kevin Sullivan was booking in the summer of 1999. But I would be remiss in not pointing out that you always are contractually obligated to give a shout out to Kurt Kilberg, which I don't think you did in our last episode. So please continue, sir.
Well, shout out number one, I think it was right after we recorded our third episode, so he barely missed the cutoff. But he had sent me a letter in the mail that was really cool. He had a drawing in there from his son, who I've met before when we hung out and went to a concert. And also with the drawing was a few WCW trading cards. He included the Freebirds, Ric Flair, and a few others. So that was really cool of him. And now for shout out number two. Well, he told me WWE was coming to town for an event. And in order to win tickets through our local radio station, you'd have to tweet a picture of yourself dressed up as your favorite wrestler. So being that we were talking about Survey Says and he was giving me feedback, I said, why don't you dress up as DDP? And he thought that he could actually borrow his father-in-law's vest, and he added some other things to add character to the costume. Like he put tape around his knuckles like DDP. I think he even might have worn the classic rib tape too. And I believe he even put in like a beef jerky stick or maybe a Slim Jim as a cigar. So he was going full on as DDP, the sleazy heel DDP in about 96, 97 era. And it was awesome. And he ended up winning too. So he got tickets and like a prize pack with a shirt and a DVD and a few other things. So he went all out, and it was pretty cool that he ended up winning.
Holy shit. How have I not seen this?
I don't know. I think he put it on Twitter, and I don't have Twitter, so I think maybe he sent me the photo. I don't know if he posted it on Facebook or not. But he kind of...
I have Twitter. God damn it. Oh, my gosh.
He was really going all out, and I thought it was pretty cool. So I was glad he won.
Say, he really went for it, it sounds like. I've got to get on this. I mean, I'm on Twitter, even if you're not. So... Wow, that is commitment right there. That is a worthy shout out, no doubt. Even though Kurt Kilberg sent you a trading card of the Freebirds, who we have, you and I both, Andy, have strong feelings about in a somewhat negative direction. But
but it was just like the gesture was pretty cool. So
the
so I can
gesture
forgive
itself,
the free
yeah,
birds.
no doubt, and this more than makes up for that. Absolutely. So excellent shout out. So we have, of course, as of last episode, a WCW Survey Says Fan of the Month Club recipient. And do we have a winner of this particular superlative this month, Andy?
Yes.
I feel like we do.
Yes, this month our winner is Mr. James Morgan. He had commented on the recent Facebook post and left some feedback that was pretty cool, and he would like on a future episode for us to dive into the Booker T, Chris Benoit Best of 7 series. And I've actually noted that it was actually among the list of like topics I have Booker T on there. And so I've kind of made like an asterisk and put like the Benoit feud with it.
Do you think he's going to be disappointed that you didn't do that for episode 5? Episode 5, episode 5, episode 5, episode 5?
Well, the thing is here, I have a good excuse that I told Tim, is that Thunder is not on the network yet. And I think that some of the Benoit matches with Booker T were on Thunder. So to properly analyze those matches, we would have to have access to Thunder.
I'm going to be perfectly honest. I know that feud up and down very, very well, just from memory. Not so much the details of the matches, because who really remembers that kind of thing. But I did actually purchase circa, I guess, 2004 on eBay, a complete, comprehensive Chris Benoit versus Booker T omnibus, so to speak, of all of their matches, including the Best of 7 series, and custom packaging that this seller created here on eBay, where they did sort of a somewhat unique slipcase of the VHS tapes I was purchasing, and I got great entertainment value out of that purchase. Again, circa 2004, 2005-ish. I do have access to all of their matches, and their feud would be a pretty easy episode to knock out, although it wasn't specifically scheduled in our immediate future here on Survey Says.
You're holding out on me because I still have like a VHS player. I wouldn't mind watching those tapes.
That's my only hurdle at this point, is I don't know that I could actually watch those tapes that I purchased, because I'm not sure exactly where I have a VCR in this house that I moved into a few years back, but I don't know where it is or if it still is functional. So that's a bit of a problem. And again, this just goes back to your point that we need to get WCW Thunder and WCW Saturday Night on the network in the worst way, because they did have one episode of WCW Saturday Night that took place during the Best of 7 series. I mean, in order to really give it the time and the attention that it deserves, we need Thunder on the network in the worst way Saturday night as well. So that is a feud I would love to revisit, actually. We need to give some love to Booker T, definitely. Thank you, James, for pointing that out, for being a loyal listener, and for being the winner of the WCW Survey Says Fan of the Month. In order to qualify for the WCW Survey Says Fan of the Month Club, all you need to do is give us a like on Facebook, give us a comment. That would be even better, of course. Have an interesting or unique sounding name. That would be deserving of a shout out. But I mean, very little commitment, very little requirements in order to qualify for the WCW Survey Says Fan of the Month Club. But congratulations to James for joining our first inductee, Coco Weaver, last month. You are now part of an illustrious group, no doubt. So thank you very much for the comments, for the suggestions, and the very deserving shout out that you're receiving here tonight.
Before we head into the main topic, I'd kind of like to share two somewhat wrestling related stories that happened within the same weekend about 2 weeks ago. The first one is there's a comedy club in town as well. And speaking of how I'm out in the Midwest, it's like this comedy club is kind of on the outskirts of town, and every time a comedian comes to town, they always rip on the location of this comedy club. It's called the Jukebox Comedy Club, and it's located right next door to a strip club, and it's right across the street from a racetrack. So this one guy, even Donnie Baker, who does Bob and Tom stuff, he even has in his commercials, every time he comes here, there's a little bit where he's like, I like coming here because it's like the Bermuda Triangle of white trash. But
in the Midwest, really?
Well, the Bermuda Triangle, because the racetrack, the strip club, and the comedy club thing, it's like a triangle or whatever. But anyways, so I was at the comedy club, and there was a guy named Ian Bagg, and I kind of had heard some of his stuff, but I went because my friend invited me, and I thought, well, I'll hang out with my buddy, and I'll check out the comedy show. Well, we sat right up front, and the guy ended up being one of those kind of improv comics where he doesn't really have a lot of material, but he just riffs on all the people in the audience and asks what they do. And so I was like, oh, man, I'm in the front seat, like right by the stage. So he asked me my name, and I said Andy, and he asked what I do, and I said I'm a radio DJ. Well, then he started talking to somebody else, and it was this lady who had a headband on, and he was like really ripping on this lady and her husband. Well, then he comes back to me later on, and he said, okay, Mr. Radio DJ, like, what's your DJ name? And I said, Andy Savage. And he's like, oh, why'd you take that name? And I was like, well, because I like wrestling, so I took it from Randy Savage. And he's like, who's your favorite wrestler? And I said, Randy Savage. And he's like, well, I hate to break it to you. You do know he's dead, right? And I was just laughing. Well, then he threw to the headband lady, and he just goes, headband, who's your favorite wrestler? And she said, Andre the Giant. And he was like, what is with this town and dead wrestlers? And, so
at least he was informed, apparently.
Yeah.
Seems a little bit woke to the professional wrestling situation of 2016.
Yeah. So that's about as far as that went into wrestling. But the next night, we had a band in town, Queensryche, and they were at this local kind of music venue that we have. In between bands, before they were the headliner, so before they were going to go on and do their set, I was like, I'll just go to the bathroom real quick so I don't miss anything. Well, I went into the bathroom. As I was leaving, I kind of went around the corner to go wash my hands, and there was a lady in the men's bathroom. And in my head, immediately the Dusty Rhodes line was like, there's a lady in the men's bathroom.
There's a lady in the man's bathroom.
Well,
oh, no.
And so it's not really as interesting as it sounds. Like, there wasn't a brawl in there or anything, but I was just kind of standing there, and I was at one sink, and the guy was at the next sink, and we kind of were, like, looking at each other like, what? We kind of exchanged glances like that. Well, then in the meantime, this black security guard guy, he was escorting the lady out, and she's like, well, you need to watch him. You need to watch him. Like, I guess her husband or boyfriend or whatever was drunk, and so she, like, accompanied him in there to maybe help him go to the bathroom or something. I don't know, but I just kind of – I was holding back from busting up laughing just because of the Dusty Rhodes, there's a lady in the men's bathroom thing. So I immediately went on Facebook, and I was like, there was literally a lady in the men's bathroom. So it's not like –
legitimately.
Yeah. It's not like as funny as it sounds, but it was just being there and then not expecting that. I don't know. And then the WCW line. Now we can continue with the show. Yeah.
Glenn, you still with us, sir?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing.
Yeah, that's amazing, man.
Well, without too much more delay, we are going to take a break, and then we'll be back with theme music here on Survey Says.
He's got the red, white, and blue running through his veins.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Voice of Ring of Honor's Kevin Kelly here. I just want to make sure you're all subscribed to all of our great feeds here at Place to Be Nation. Now, it's really easy to do. Just head to iTunes or your preferred podcatcher app today and search for and subscribe to the Place to Be Nation wrestling feed, Place to Be Nation pop feed, Pro Wrestling Only feed, and of course, the Kevin Kelly Show feed, which includes the full archives of my podcast. Subscribe, listen, and then rate us and leave feedback today. And of course, as always, enjoy all the great action of Ring of Honor Wrestling and everything presented to you on PlaceToBeNation.com.
Place to Be Nation's JT Rosero here, and I want to let you know that we have a ton of great podcasts available to you on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and PlaceToBeNation.com, and we offer them to you across two great feeds. On the Place to Be Nation wrestling feed, you can check out Scott Criscolo and me on the Mothership, the Place to Be podcast, with our famous Vintage Vault pay-per-view reviews. PTBN also covers current-day wrestling with the smash hit clotheslines and headlines, our steady veteran main event, and the beloved monthly pay-per-view reaction shows with immediate feedback on all Pro Wrestling Super Shows. Relive wrestling's past with our monthly pay-per-view rewind series led by Ben Morse, the always contentious Dangerous Alliance podcast, and Survey Says, a fun look back at the good, bad, and ugly of WCW. On our very popular Place to Be Nation Pop podcast feed, we offer such great shows as the Glenn Butler Podcast Hour Spectacular, Rank and File, NBA Team, Lucha Undead, Geek and Sassy, and a veritable podcast heaven for comic fans with hard-traveling fanboys, Sellers Points, Todd Weber's Conversation, and Imaginary Stories. Subscribe to both of those feeds on iTunes and rate and leave feedback for us as well. All of these shows, plus others, available at PlaceToBeNation.com, where we cover pro wrestling, sports, movies, comics, plus tournaments and more. Be sure to support our site by using PlaceToBeNation.com/Amazon when doing your online shopping, and download our free Place to Be Vintage Vault Refresh ebooks via the links on the right-hand side of our site. We also want to thank our friends at Bonehead's Wing Bar in West Warwick, Rhode Island, and Fall River, Massachusetts, TheHistoryOfWrestling.com, and Scott Keats' Blog of Doom. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr as well. PlaceToBeNation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
The PWO PTBN feed has changed its name. Now it will be known simply as Pro Wrestling Only, so it should be easier to find and indeed to say. All of your favourite shows are still here, including Where the Big Boys Play, Letters from Kayfabe, Titans of Wrestling, Tag Teams Back Again, This Week in Wrestling, and many, many more, including our full archives of tremendous content. So make sure you subscribe to the Pro Wrestling Only feed today.
We're back here on Survey Says, finally taking a look at our topic for this episode, which is the theme music of WCW. It's kind of been my pet project for the last month. Between these episodes, I had a lot of theme songs in my head that I was kind of like, oh man, these would be kind of good to share.
Did you go to Theme Raider and get some good ones?
I was about to say the same thing. We've got to get that shout out in there.
Oh, yeah. Well, these were a few, some of them that I actually had, and some I went onto YouTube. But the thing is like, I didn't know how I just incorporated them into the show instead of just going, hey, man, check out this one or whatever. But then it hit me on Sunday that they actually had a few like CDs, not as many as WWE, WWF, the music, volume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. But they still had
17.
Oh, wow. It's kind of like now here's music or whatever those CDs were.
Yeah, now that's what I call wrestling.
Yeah.
Now that's what I call wrestling, volume 97.
They probably didn't have like a marketing like WWF did where they were releasing those volumes, but they did have a few CDs out throughout their tenure, and I realized some corresponded with actual CDs. So that's how I'm going to go in order. Well, the first one, it's not really technically a CD. What I did when I first started working here at the radio station, I was mixing commercials like concert promos and things, and they usually use like stuff in the background, like bed music, is what it's called. So I thought, hey, a lot of the wrestling music is like bed music. Maybe I can find that. So what I did was I was looking.
Did you say bed music?
Yeah, so it's not like technically like going to bed music, although the NWO theme didn't they say it's like porn music? So I guess that might be like.
Well, while we're going through this music, let's grade it on how good it would be to get down to.
Maybe we should take a second to rewind back because I just remembered something. You had 5 things that you were going to bring to the show and how you relate to different things. You'd said you come up with a list of 5 things that you know on a given topic. So,
right.
Could you explain that?
Well, that's something I've done just in common conversation with people who are very interested in, for instance, sports that I'm not interested in. Once I tried to find, do I know 5 things about hockey, for instance? And I find it's an interesting way of gauging what you learn from cultural osmosis, even when you're not particularly interested in a subject, and even when you're starting to become interested in a subject. And so when we were coming up to the show today, I thought, do I know 5 things, or what are 5 things I know about WCW theme music? First thing, it begins and ends with Hulk Hogan. I know that Hulk Hogan had a terrible ripoff of Hulk Hogan's song, because lots of people had terrible ripoffs of songs, but I think it's particularly interesting that Hulk Hogan had to have a terrible ripoff of Hulk Hogan's own song.
Was it really a terrible ripoff, though?
Pretty terrible, yeah.
Okay.
Second, obviously, the NWO. Everyone's heard that a million times. Everybody knows the NWO music. Third, more interestingly, I know that the tag team Doom had a smooth jazz theme, and it was awesome. We may be getting to that later. I don't know if that's one of your samples, Andy.
Damn it. I've dropped the ball already, and we haven't even begun.
Well, we can use it for the bumpers or something. We're cool. Fourth, I noticed when I was watching the early Nitros, the Zodiac had Rey Mysterio's music, and coming at that retroactively was pretty distracting.
Yes, this was a WCW hallmark of using theme music that would be more recognizable for certain characters in a different incarnation. I want to say that there were some common, let's say, production themes that sort of made the rounds of different wrestlers, even if they are more commonly tied to one performer than another. That was something that WCW did, and is not a credit to their branding strategy, shall we say.
Yeah, and of course, the fifth thing that I know about WCW theme music is that, kind of like a lot of WWF theme music for a while, Jimmy Hart wrote a whole lot of it.
Oh, yeah, that's correct.
Including the greatest achievement in lyrics in his career, American males, American males, American males, American males, American males, American males, American males. You got to go up at the end of the line, you know.
Bravo, he's not exactly Jim Johnson, is he?
Oh, actually, he wrote some kind of catchy stuff, too. I think he did some stuff in the 80s. Like, aren't a lot of the ones that got replaced, right? Like the Jive Soul Bro. It must have been his, because that's why it was replaced when they put out the WrestleMania DVDs, right? Because there was some big backlash
that would make sense.
About that.
I don't know personally, but that would make sense, yeah.
Yeah, that was a weird situation with those video releases where songs that they had commissioned and released on album and presumably had owned had to be replaced for some reason. It seemed very, very strange. But I think Jimmy Hart did write a lot of those. He wrote Big Boss Man's song, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
The Mounties, a lot of the songs from that era, yeah.
You would think that the in-house production songs that the WWF did back in the day would be fair game, but if they were Jimmy Hart Productions versus Jim Johnson Productions, you may or may not hear them.
I'm only speculating, but
me too.
Maybe there was some situation where his deal required that he would get royalties and they just didn't want to pay him.
See, this kind of makes sense now. Talking it in this context with the theme music being Jimmy Hart's and some being like in-house, like the Jim Johnson, it makes sense why, like in the 2000s, you know, when they acquired like WCW and a lot of those guys, they were changing their name, or they had names that they could copyright and like trademark, right? So they were all big about these are WWE branded things. So it makes sense why they might shift away from Jimmy Hart and bring in like Jim Johnson. They're like, okay, we're going to have this guy write stuff and we're going to own this. Whereas the previous stuff through Jimmy Hart might have been like, yeah, they'd have to pay him royalties to use it.
Yeah, just different contractual relationships, it seems like.
And contractual relationships was something that WCW was great at, right? So I'm sure Jimmy Hart had a pretty plum deal for the songs that he wrote.
Speaking of that, I have a few that I think I am going to get to that are produced by Jimmy Hart. Maybe not his like finest moments, but there are some that he wrote that I've kind of cherry picked. We can jump right back into that after the bed music. So this was like 10 years ago, right? I was diving in and like trying to find this music online, and I remember looking at, I used to have an old wrestling website that was bookmarked on an internet browser years ago. This was like before YouTube and Wikipedia and all the stuff that we use now to search things on the internet. Well, it had like whose theme was what and what song title that it was. So I used that to look through an actual production library. Well, I found out that Jericho's original theme song was actually a song by a group called Mammoth. Then I think you had said something, didn't you say like the band was actually on like a label related to WCW or something like that?
Yes. So this band was signed to a label that was like a subsidiary of some production company that Turner Broadcast Networks utilize. So there's several layers of separation here, it seems like, but at the end of the day, this band's music kind of got included in the Turner production library of themes, where it would be used for like NBA basketball highlights and all kinds of stuff. And even Chris Jericho, and I think in his first book, his autobiography, refers to it as NBA highlights number 2 or number 7 or something, where it's literally just an instrumental version of this Mammoth song called All the Days. And it's not, I wouldn't even call it a WCW knockoff theme, because it is the actual song that was recorded by an actual band, but it's simply the instrumental stripped down version. Go for it.
The one that I got, and I've included right now, is one with the lyrics. Here
the actual song. Okay, yeah, go for it.
Oh man.
So subtract the lyrics from that song, and that is literally Chris Jericho's original WCW theme. And it has made an appearance on this show, I think, on our very last episode, right? Coming back, we're going into our break. That was Chris Jericho's first theme for WCW, and it's that song minus lyrics. Nothing special about it. That's just how it played out.
Do you think they've ever done a cover of that at a Fozzy concert?
That's a great question. Jericho has never expressed any sort of fondness for it, but it would be kind of awesome if they did. I mean, because I dig that song. I mean, I really do.
It kind of sounds like it would have been on like a soundtrack for like Sylvester Stallone's Over the Top or something, you know? It sounds like that, or like on the credits, you know?
Well, the thing that came to mind for me was that it would be over like a montage sequence in a teenage comedy. You know, like they steal dad's sports car and they're driving around the city footloose and fancy free, the wind in their hair.
That's a very good point, because it's a song that, devoid of any sort of context, it could be interpreted as very broad, right? Where it could be applied to various different things. Hence the Turner Production Library's interest in this song, I would imagine. So that sort of epitomizes, I think, what we're going to be getting into here and delving into further.
I actually did see Fozzy live in concert last year. Well, I was actually going to see Slash and his band Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators, and when it was announced, they hadn't even announced an opener or anything. So the day of the show, I thought I would look on the theater's website, and it said Fozzy, and I lost my mind because it was Fozzy when we got there. He came out on stage at the start, and he was wearing the light-up jacket that he wears in wrestling.
No shit.
Yeah.
Well, I could see it working very well in both wrestling and musical performances. I mean, it's sort of the same idea of that just over the top. Very good. I'm glad you got to experience that. That's pretty awesome.
His band didn't cover the Mammoth song, but they did cover a song by ABBA, SOS.
Ooh.
It was probably the highlight of his little set, because like I wasn't expecting that. Another one that I've actually used the version with the lyrics, and it's like hilarious. And I was listening to it again a while ago when I was jamming out in my car, and it's actually Chris Benoit's theme. Oh, man, did you love that bugle at the beginning?
What the fuck? You have just blown my mind. I had no idea that was an actual song with lyrics, ever. I thought that was just lifted like from some early 90s porno, quite honestly. Like, never mind. I'm not going to go into the details, but my mind is blown. I am lost right now. Like, I couldn't make out a lot of those lyrics, but knowing that it was a song with legitimate lyrics, words to it, I'm gone right now. I don't even know what to say.
Glenn, what do you have to say?
I'm worried about Tim.
You should be, because this is such a revelation to me, and I feel like it's such a find. I don't think anyone knows this. I mean, what the fuck is that? Can you elaborate on this at all?
I forgot where I even got that from, actually, because like way back when I got all those things, I actually they have like production libraries that you can subscribe to. And,
right.
I don't even remember what it was. And there was even one that I think we pay to use like different production libraries through radio stations, like some kind of bartering agreement. But there was one that I actually signed up for, and I said, yeah, I'm with this, radio group, blah, 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 blah. And then the guy's like, all right, here's access to our stuff. And I think it might have been one of those. So I probably lied to get access to it, but it was well worth it just to blow your mind. So
no, definitely well worth it. And I love that story. And quite honestly, I always just assumed it was a straightforward production song. I didn't think that WCW had altered it in any way. I didn't think that they were allowed to alter production songs.
Well, what's so weird is hearing it as an actual song. It doesn't fit Benoit like at all, because it's kind of like a dancey song.
Not in the least. And what the hell was that intro?
I know. What the fuck was that? What the fuck? This has never been heard by anyone. I'm going to go on record and just say that right now. We are in uncharted territory. Holy fuck. I am so I can't even say marking out right now because I am just in another plane of existence.
It's beyond marking out.
Beyond marking out.
Do you guys remember any of those things that WWF put out, it was like WrestleMania, the album? And I think Vince McMahon, it was Linda McMahon, ended up using an instrumental as her theme song. Are you guys familiar with any of those?
The WrestleMania theme song, yeah.
Yeah, they had an album.
Are you referring to our director of the Small Business Administration?
Oh, no, please. Moving on. Andy, play some music.
Well, around that time, WrestleMania, the album, had these weird songs, I guess are produced by Simon Cowell, who would go on to do American Idol, where they have weird music and they got wrestlers singing.
Yeah, including on that WrestleMania album, the Randy Savage rap that has gone on to be a talisman of the Place to Be podcast.
Yes.
Talisman, yes.
Well, in that same era, it was 1993. WCW dipped into the CD and cassette world with one called Slam Jam. And it had themes that would end up going on to be used for years, like the Sting and the Steiner Brothers themes. They also had Ron Simmons had a song, and even Dustin Rhodes had a theme song. Well, here's one that I really love, and it's one of my favorite theme songs. It was for Ravishing Rick Rude, and it was on the Slam Jam CD.
He's simply ravishing.
I fucking love that song, and I'm so glad you played it. That was his second WCW theme song. Am I right?
Yeah, he's got another one that he used like previously, which I was going to get to later, but we can use it right now too if we want, because there's a bunch that WCW had kind of famously like ripped off like popular songs from the era, and so this one, I think it was when he debuted in like '91, and it is a kind of direct lift of Janet Jackson's Black Cat song.
Yes.
See, that song, it's a fine enough song, but I don't really see it for the ravishing Rick Rude character. I think the other song really captures that a little more.
Sure. Yeah, that first song is pretty much a straight riff on, like you said, Black Cat. Okay enough, but I think what really sells you on the Rick Rude character is that second theme song, that Simply Ravishing. I don't know I can't remember what the proper title of it is. Andy, you and I kind of went back and forth trying to pin down what this was inspired by, what this came from, what this was lifted from. And you said, first you told me, listen to Easy Lover. And I said, okay, yeah, I'll listen to, he said, listen to, just the Philip Banks portion of that, which I did. And I was like, yeah, I can kind of hear it, but I still think it's original enough. But then you said Whitney Houston, right? Where is this? What does this song really owe its origins to?
How Will I Know by Whitney Houston. And I don't know if it's like maybe a combination of the two of those or something. I don't know. I still can't place what it is. Maybe it's an original thing that just kind of, sounds alike in that style. I'm not sure. But maybe Coco Weaver can
this gets
help us.
Into sort of a theory that I have about the degrees of originality when it comes to wrestler theme music, right? Where on one extreme you have like an actual song that has nothing to do with wrestling, which is nonetheless licensed and used for a wrestler. I'm thinking of Cult of Personality for CM Punk by Living Color. Just a totally normal, just straight up song, which was used for his entrance music. At the other end of the extreme, you have something which is totally original, produced in-house by perhaps Jimmy Hart or Jim Johnson for a particular wrestling character. And this sits somewhere in the middle where it obviously borrows from, like you said, Whitney Houston, that song, which you can totally hear elements of, but it has lyrics that are original and pertain to the character of Rick Rude in WCW. And I kind of appreciate that. I think it's really cool, and that's why I love that you played it. It's one of my, I would say, top 10 favorite wrestler entrance themes, without a doubt. He was just such a cool and such a suave, good-looking motherfucker, right? I mean, the song is basically saying he's gonna steal your girlfriend, fuck your girlfriend, and laugh in your face about it, right?
Yeah.
And celebrate it.
I think you're exactly right, that it definitely plays to Rick Rude's character in that way.
With this Slam Jam, it was like a cassette that I'm going to throw out the other contractually obligated shout out. Kurt Kilberg, Double K. He had this on cassette, right? And we were doing some tape trading around 2006, 2007, so it's still going back a ways. He sent me the cassette, and I remembered at our radio station, we have a tape deck still. So I played the tape, recorded it on the computer, and made CD copies for us. So I was going to shout out to him. Thanks for doing that and sending me that cassette years ago, because now it came in handy. And now I don't know if next song, it was not part of the Slam Jam album, but I think it might have been done on the same recording sessions because the guy whose theme music this is, he debuted around that time. So here we'll go with Too Cold Scorpio. Damn, she was really belting that out.
I was about to ask, have you seen the accompanying video for this?
Yeah, I have. Have you, Glenn? Have you seen anything on Scorpio?
No, I have seen Flash Funk a little in the WWF and his whole ECW run. I don't think I've seen him in WCW, actually. But I get the impression his character was very consistent across all of the different companies.
Yeah, he'd pretty much dance out to the ring and then do some splashes. You should actually check out his run in WCW if you can, because there's one match that I really like. It was him against Barry Windham, and it was almost like a throwaway title match because Barry Windham was a champ. But it was on one of the Clash of the Champions in mid-'93. So that's a recommendation if you want to check out more WCW after this.
Yeah, Scorpio was one of those guys who was just fucking outstanding, but really unsung because he came along at a time where work rate, so to speak, wasn't really valued. He was very much ahead of his time.
He's also part of Survey Says favorite tag team, Hung and Bung. I had to mention that.
Yes. One half of the favorite WCW Survey Says tag team of Hung and Bung. He is the Hung contingent of that, as legend would have it.
Are we getting into some anatomical observations here?
Yes, absolutely. As you might surmise, Buff Bagwell, his tag team partner, would be the bung part of the equation. So, that would allude to a WCW hot take of Scorpio being hung in the great tag team that we have christened Hung and Bung. I mean, he was really out of this world as an in-ring performer. Circa 1992, 1993-ish in WCW, and later, like you said, in ECW. When he went to WWF, he was kind of a prototypical, what would become the Godfather character, which is rather unfortunate and rather a misuse of his abilities because he could fucking go in the ring. And this song was accompanied by a music video, which I don't know how to describe unless you've actually seen it. I would just say go out on YouTube, search for WCW Scorpio music video, something like that, because it really needs to be seen to be fully experienced. Because this is like some sort of prototypical making a difference Fatu type stuff.
I'd say not making a difference Fatu, but it's more like Mighty Ducks, where the kids are they're playing like a game in a park, and then all of a sudden Emilio Estevez rolls up in a limo and he's hanging out with the kids, and that's what Scorpio kind of does. But the kids are playing like
Except
a pickup
it's
basketball
not
game.
Emilio Estevez, it's Scorpio, right?
Yeah, because he gets out of a limo and they're like, "Hey, man, we're just playing basketball after school." And he's like, "Well, you need to go to school, kids. I'll take you, but we'll dance there."
Yeah, he's like, "We're gonna dance there." And he has this like little 2-step thing that he does, which he does very well, by the way.
Moving along, here is actually an album that I don't own, but when I was coming up with these like theme songs and the way to kind of pair them up with the albums, this one was like a total flashback, and it's one that is actually right up Glenn's alley because he said he didn't like Hulk Hogan's rip-off Jimmy Hart kind of theme in WCW in the 90s. Well, it turns out Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Hart did an entire album of songs called Hulk Hogan's Wrestling Boot Traveling Band. I shit you not. And it's
Wait. Hulk Hogan's Wrestling Boot Traveling Band? Is that like Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas?
I don't know, but it's got Hulk Hogan on the front of this CD from like 95. And I think I remember seeing it in Kmart at the time too. I think even I looked on Wikipedia and it said that his wife Linda did some backing vocals. And so I pulled one song from YouTube. It actually relates back to Hung and Bung, so that's why I had to play it. So here it goes. It's simply titled Hulkster's Back.
Hey, check out the pythons, baby. The Hulkster's back.
I was hanging, I was banging, I was turning it on. Everybody on the beach knew it wouldn't be long. I took the belt, it was theirs, I don't really care. In the hands of the maniacs, we can all share.
Hey, check out the pythons, baby. Would you look at that? Hey, check out the pythons, baby. The Hulkster's back.
Fortune and fame was his middle name. He climbed as high as the sky, he remains the same. With the training and the prayers and the vitamins too. Don't mess with us, or we'll beat you too.
Are you a Hollywood producer?
Hey, check out the pythons.
Wow. Wow. You know, there's this whole genre of white celebrities talk rapping, sort of, which sometimes is just abominable and sometimes is acceptable camp. And I'm not exactly sure which side of the line that falls on.
Well, I'm not exactly sure what side of the line that falls on either, but I think that is a diamond in the rough. That's got to go into the Place to Be Nation pantheon of great unsung wrestling theme songs, no doubt. And the portion where Linda comes in is very telling, I think. Again, Andy, you've managed to blow my mind because this is inexplicable. This is not something that I thought would come up in this show, and yet I'm spinning right now because I don't know quite what to say.
Are you spinning from the eggnog that you drank?
I know. I have imbibed on this evening in preparation for this show. And my mind is nonetheless blown for having heard this. So you have done your homework, sir. Glenn, what do you think?
Andy, when did you say this album was made?
I think it came out in like 95.
95, I see. Well,
it's got a Wikipedia entry because I was like, I remembered it, and I'm like, oh, that would be a good one to look up. And YouTube has like one of those videos where it's the entire album, and actually I didn't even listen to the whole album. I just kind of clicked, and I think it starts off with Hulk Hogan's like the Real American WCW song, and then I just clicked a couple minutes ahead, and I actually clicked right about the time where he's like, I was hanging, I was banging, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta use that. It's such
was
like
he hanging and banging with Hung and Bung? Well, someone had better tell our good friends at the Place to Be Nation, Chad and Parv, who do the Where the Big Boys Play series of WCW pay-per-view and Clash and Supercard retrospective podcast, because when they get to the Hulk Hogan era, and when they get to 1995, this had better be a major part of their show.
That's an excellent point. They just covered Slamboree in 1993, so I guess we're about 2 years removed from this. We can take it down and definitely bring it to their attention as something that they need to cover.
One of the things that they'll probably cover in the Hogan era is all of the multitudinous marketing techniques that they used with Hulk Hogan. And this is definitely, I don't know if it's a highlight or a low light. Again, I don't know what side of the line it comes down on, but it's
a
got to
highlight.
be notable. I will believe you, sir.
Well, I'm sure those guys, Chad and Parv, they are the real experts. So I'm sure that they know about it. They probably got it in their back pocket, too.
They may need the reminder, nonetheless. So that was news to me. So pat on your back, Andy, for exposing me to something that I never knew existed. What else you got for us?
Here's another one. It was from the following year in 1996, and it wasn't released in America. I think it was like a German release. But these are more Jimmy Hart's creations. Like, I guess you already mentioned one, Glenn. It was the American Males. And then there's a whole host of other ones that were on this like CD. And I guess I came across it a few days ago as I was compiling the Hulk Hogan and all those various things. It was in 1996. It's called WCW Christmas Brawl. But I've actually got the wrestler himself to introduce this song as well.
Hello, here is Alex Wright.
Wipe those tears off your face. Just like that, he can't be replaced. You're tired of hearing all those lies. Silly excuses and alibis. You tried to put you on the shelf, but you can carry on yourself. You don't need a helping hand to find yourself a real man.
It's the great Alex Wright. Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's Alex Wright.
Was that really introduced by Alex Wright?
Of course it is.
That remains to be seen, but
I wouldn't lie to you.
It doesn't really matter here or there. I think that this was an unsung, unheralded hit in the 1996 Eurotrash club scene, but I kind of dig it. I definitely dig it, actually.
I am somewhat familiar with Alex Wright. I've seen a few of his matches, and that music, I mean, man, if they didn't make a copy on vinyl and try to shop that around to clubs, I don't know what they were doing.
They didn't, because it was WCW.
See, you're buying into that narrative now.
Oh, now I'm buying into that narrative. But I guess at the end of the day is what I'm trying to stress is that Alex Wright had a much more recognizable club kid scene WCW musical theme than this. So I'm glad that Andy, you brought attention to this lesser known track. How did you come across this? I'm curious.
I think it's probably what everybody's experienced, where you're searching for something on YouTube and you end up finding something else that spirals into something else, and it's like you get all these recommended videos, and then by the time you're on another video, you forgot where you even started. So I think I was looking up someone else's theme, and along the side it said WCW Christmas Brawl, and voila. It wasn't really huge wrestlers. It was kind of like maybe the second tier, like, as I said, it was like American Males, Nasty Boys, Alex Wright. It even had Brian Pillman's on there.
I feel like this is not on the network, regrettably.
Well, I've still got another one to play from Christmas Brawl, so let's get to it. It's by a tag team called Public Enemy.
Na 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 na. Lottie-dottie-dottie, we likes to party. Lottie-dottie-dottie, we likes to party. Lottie-dottie-dottie, we likes to party. You gotta get up to get down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Rock it like hell, make it sound like heaven. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come on, everybody, let's have some fun. Everybody.
Okay, that definitely sounds like a real song.
It sounds like that song they used in ECW called Here Comes the Hot Stepper.
Yeah, that was the thing that WCW would do, where ECW wrestlers would have entrance music that was a true, actual song that they would come out to, because ECW didn't really care about licensing agreements, this, that, or the other. But that was more of a going concern for WCW. So, and representing these former ECW talents when they brought them in for their theme music, it would be very derivative of their former ECW songs. But they certainly couldn't use the genuine article, so they would kind of do like a knockoff version of it. And I think this is a good example of that, where it's a watered down version of some real song, which here again, I can't quite put my finger on. Maybe you could help me in that regard. I don't know.
Glenn, are you familiar with Public Enemy, the wrestling tag team?
Well, yes, I've seen a voluminous amount of ECW by now. So, yes, I'm very familiar with their run there and a little bit in WCW, which seemed a little watered down in the first place on their part. There may have been other factors interfering in that. So, yeah, like Tim said, the song is one of those inspiration deals where they would take inspiration from something. So,
so was this similar to their ECW entrance music?
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen much of them in ECW.
Oh, and then probably what's made it onto the network, ECW really used actual like recorded songs from artists, and so I think all those are pretty much totally like.
Yeah, those are gone.
Yeah,
definitely.
They're gone on the network.
Yeah, definitely. But man, they were so good in ECW though. That crowd loved them like there was no tomorrow.
Here is another one that I remember. I don't actually own the CD, but I think Tim, he might be quite familiar with this. Do you remember WCW Mayhem the Music?
A little bit.
Because I remember seeing it in stores like 99, 2000, kind of like when they were rebranded with that new logo and the new Nitro set and everything.
Yes, they went through a rebranding and they did a shitty entrance music kind of CD release in the vein of WWF The Music, but because it was from WCW, it seemed several steps down from that. So I did not purchase, but I am vaguely familiar with this as an artifact.
Well, around that time, I think to correspond with the CD, like Sting, his theme music updated, and it was Seek and Destroy by Metallica. But
right, it was the actual song "Seek and Destroy" from Metallica. It was not a knockoff or anything. It was the actual song.
Well, Goldberg was given an actual rock song as well.
I do remember this. Yep. Okay. I feel like there's a little bit more or too much pomp and circumstance for a Goldberg entrance theme. Maybe if you cut out the first 30 seconds to arguably a minute to that song, you'd have a pretty killer Goldberg entrance song.
See, I was thinking the same way. It takes like a minute or so to get to that chorus. We crush them.
It takes a while to get going, right?
Yeah, it's not a bad song, but
no, it's not a bad song by any stretch. It just doesn't really fit. And they gave him this new entrance theme, and it was sort of like, okay, it's cool, it's Megadeth, it's a real actual band, but it doesn't feel like Goldberg necessarily.
It feels a little generic to me too. It feels like a song just for some generic badass, where Goldberg is at least presented as something a little more special. I think they really struck gold with the Goldberg theme that we all know and remember, even I know, and that is really the only one for him, as far as I'm concerned.
Which admittedly wasn't anything special, but when you hear it, you think Goldberg badass, like you said.
Well, it's the combination, right? It's the strong chords in that music and his entire entrance and his aura and the crowd reaction, and it all kind of melds together to create something special.
Right. It leaves no questions unanswered, basically.
Now, I'm a fan of Megadeth, and it seems like a lot of the real Megadeth fans, they don't like the song because it was maybe too commercial sounding, whereas they used to be like a thrash band. But I kind of like it. But then at the same time, I think they actually did write it. I think Dave Mustaine, the singer and songwriter, he wrote it to be used for hockey. So it kind of fits a sports thing. But yeah, like you guys have said, it doesn't fit the Goldberg character.
So he didn't write it specifically for Goldberg the wrestler.
No, it came out about the same time because it was, I just remember this now. Do you remember in 99, they came out with a Universal Soldier movie, like a sequel with Jean-Claude Van Damme. And I think it had Goldberg in there. And I think it was on that soundtrack. So that must have been what the thing was with relating to WCW. Hey, we got a wrestler in a movie, so we're going to cross-promote.
He was doing, it was kind of like a direct-to-video, direct-to-DVD kind of movie, maybe, or it had a limited release in theaters where Goldberg was definitely gaining steam as a mainstream, not just sports celebrity, but a bona fide just pop culture icon. That was a thing that was happening in 1998 and 1999. So you're right. He did do some films, and I kind of preface that with air quotes. But yeah, I feel like that was part of his persona at the time period.
Now there was more on this WCW Mayhem the Music. There was ICP had a song that was used, I think, with Vampiro. I think Limp Bizkit contributed a song because they were popular at the time. But
oh, good Lord, ICP and Limp Bizkit, huh?
Well, I'm not playing either of those, so you're safe. But there is one that is kind of a rap song that I will put in the air quotes as well. But the reason why I went with this Mayhem version is because it's got its own authentic intro.
Hey, yo, wait a minute. Hey, Lex, I know you can hear me, so peep this. There's Russian, there's Italian, there's French, and there's creamy. Those are dressings. So tonight, get ready to bow down, toss my salad, and peel my potatoes.
Is this what I think it is?
Step to my homeboy K-Dog and get slammed on the mat, get your whole head cracked. The way man once last vocals on a filter soul track. I step into the ring yelling orale, from Mexico all the way to the USA.
All right, I won't subject you to you guys to any more of that because I had it a little bit longer. I had the full track actually.
Glenn,
hi.
I love how you guys' reactions were both over that track. Like, while I was playing other songs, you didn't say anything, but that one, you're both just like, "Oh fuck."
Well,
I feel like "peel my potatoes" doesn't mean anything, right?
Does now.
Well, it's sort of covering for the preceding "toss my salad" line. Which certainly does carry a very specific connotation.
Yeah, well, okay, let's dive into this a little deeper.
Please do.
I mean, tossing a salad has a certain connotation, so if we're supposed to interpret "peel my potatoes" in that context, there isn't anything you can do akin to peeling that I think would be appetizing.
No. Or sexual.
Sexual? What are you talking about?
Toss my salad? This is just a nonsense song. We're not alluding to any particular... I'm going to stop right there.
Okay, yeah. Sure, I mean, we're just singing about food.
Mm-hmm.
Viva la raza!
Okay, this was the Conan rap video, right?
Yeah, I believe so. It wasn't actually his...
It was not his entrance music, but it was his rap video that they promoted to great extent on various WCW programs such as Nitro and Thunder. I don't know. I mean, did Conan have allusions to really springboarding his success or his wrestling celebrity into a rap career? I don't know. This seems like, I don't want to say the worst rap song of 1999, but certainly isn't the best. It's very boilerplate of its time period, I would say. And thankfully it did not lead to anything more than this. We were spared more mainstream Conan rap songs, I believe.
Well, there is another group that had a song on the album who were professional wrestlers, the West Texas Rednecks. And I was going to use that theme anyways, but the one on Mayhem is even better because, like the Conan one, it has its own introduction as well. So here we go.
Folks, you can smell these guys from a mile away. Unless you're downwind, then you can smell them from a couple of miles away. They are the members of the West Texas Rednecks. They are Bobby Duncombe Jr., Kendall and Barry Windham, and ringleader, the leader of the pack, Kurt Hennig.
Well, let me ask you this. How many people just hate rap music? You know, we got a brand new song here we're going to whip on you. It's called Rap is Crap, and it go like this right here. A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4.
I like country music. I love country girls. I like Willie Nelson. And don't forget about Merle. There's only one thing that I hate, 'cause it's a bunch of crap. I hate rap. I like NASCAR racing. Richard Petty's still the king. Yeah, they call me a redneck, but you know that's a beautiful thing. There's only one thing that I hate, 'cause it's a bunch of crap. I hate rap.
So he was whipping that one on you.
Oh, I knew that was coming up. Glenn, I'll defer to you.
Well, I mean, as far as pastiches of various musical genres go, I mean, of course, they're going to do the country song at some point, right? And they're going to do it for that group, and that all makes perfect sense. Now, as far as the views espoused in the song, are they talking about all rap or just WCW rap? Because we've heard a couple of things that might lend one to an opinion.
I think, quite honestly, that they're just referring to WCW rap. But at the same time, I think that's the only rap that they have been exposed to.
You're saying Bobby Duncombe Jr. doesn't listen to a wide variety of music?
No, I don't think there's a lot of versatility in his musical tastes, or in those of Kurt Hennig or Bobby Duncombe Jr. or one Kendall Windham. So I think their exposure was a little bit limited, and you can't really hold that against them, considering the WCW product of the time period.
Yeah, maybe.
Oddly, surprisingly enough, this became quite a thing. It was a bit of a hit within the enclave of Southern contemporary rock radio, so to speak.
Oh, really? It was played on the radio?
Well, I don't know. That's a bit of an assumption on my part, but I feel like the idea was, or the problem was, that these guys were supposed to be the heels. They did this song kind of as a joke, which was supposed to be mocked and derided by wrestling viewers, the WCW audience of the time period, and it had quite the opposite effect. Because this is WCW, and because Conan and by extension the Filthy Animals were so fucking obnoxious and unlikable, not just to a Southern wrestling audience, but to anyone who was watching WCW at the time. So anything that took the piss out of them was gonna get a pop.
Well, that kind of exhausts World Championship Wrestling's like extensive attempts to make CDs, but there is one that isn't a CD, but you can find it on iTunes. That's how I came across it, because when we were first talking about the show and we were actually coming up with a name, and this was like early August, well, I was at work and I was like, well, now that we're actually going to do this show and we're going to record it, I want to find some music, because that's what podcasts have. They have the intro, outro, bumper music and stuff. Well, I looked on iTunes to see if there were any WCW themes, and it's a WWE release, but it's called The Music of WCW. And I think it's got 40-some songs. Like, it has Kidman's The Crow Sting. It's got Saturn and Canyon, The Horsemen, and, like, Bagwell. And those aren't ones that I decided to pick. I went with more of the comedy ones because I was at work, and I listened to this one, and I was in tears. I was laughing that hard. I was in tears. So here it is. It's Mr. Wonderful. And I can't remember this one being used, but it's a good one.
Yeah, yes.
I was going to fade out on that lady, but I'm like, she's really carrying out that note, so I want to let it go before I fade out.
Amazing. Simply amazing.
It's
Wonderful,
so
even.
weird to me that Paul Orndorff even had a run in WCW that, I mean, it's immediately recognizable as his theme music, but it's just so bizarre to me that he had this kind of second career in WCW. And I don't even want to call it a renaissance because it didn't amount to much of anything, but it's like you think of him as being such a WWF guy and a frankly Hogan guy.
Yeah, like the first WrestleMania, I just listened to that podcast, the Mothership's podcast today, and yeah, he's in the main event, so he's like is a big WWF guy. But I do kind of forget that he was in WCW.
The high mark of Paul Orndorff's WCW run is his segment with the Horsemen, where Brian Pillman basically reads him, runs him down, he gets all pissed off, and then Ric Flair and Arn Anderson beat his ass, or they give him like a double pile driver, and that's like the end of his career, more or less, which is a little bit unfortunate, but yeah, this was his entrance music, and it's like you said, it was from, what did you say, a WWE produced release of
like a compilation
WCW music.
Yeah, it's called WWE like colon or semicolon the music of WCW, and I think it's all this Jimmy Hart stuff because it lists him and another guy as like the composers.
I am looking up this thing right now, and it is voluminous. It has 60 songs.
Oh, 60.
Booty Man's on here. The LWO.
Oh, yeah, because it does have the Eddie Guerrero one. Yeah, the one that's like the...
Rap is Crap, which we were talking about a minute ago. But yeah, the Mr. Wonderful theme, I think, is just a delightful bit of cheese. Like, it's large, it's broad, it's operatic. You know, that's the sort of theme you want for a wrestler of Paul Orndorff's vintage.
Now,
do you remember? I think it might have been like an old school Raw or a Hall of Fame thing, or I don't remember exactly, but Paul Orndorff came out on Raw like within the last couple of years and had that theme.
Oh,
and everyone on like the Place to Be chat was popping for it big time.
I think I remember that. Yeah, it was one of those old school Raws where they bring out like IRS and Sergeant Slaughter and those guys.
Yes, not necessarily the theme that you would expect or anticipate for Paul Orndorff, but that's what they used. So yeah, I do kind of vaguely remember that.
This next one is, I don't remember really watching the guy very much, except when he was with another group called 3 Count. But this is one that is listed on that album, WWE, the music of WCW, for Tank Abbott, and it's called Tank Thang with an A.
I'd like to smash your face. I'd like to break your jaw. I'd like to rip your tongue out and make you eat it raw. Ain't nothing but a tank thing. Ain't nothing but a tank thing. Ain't nothing but a tank thing. Ain't nothing but a tank thing.
Have you ever heard that before, Tim?
Yes. I don't remember it as such, but hearing it back, I guess I gather they were using this at the time that Tank Abbott was the bodyguard, so to speak, for 3 Count, where he was a fan of their music and their performances, and anyone who tried to step to them, he would fuck them up. Because he was just such an individual. So he got custom theme music during that time period. I don't know who exactly performed this, but it seems to be keeping within the same vein of the 3 Count entrance music, which was sort of a entity onto itself.
I was going to guess Jimmy Hart because I think it sounds like him singing it.
It does, yeah. If I had to guess, I would say Jimmy Hart. So I guess probably the height of Tank Abbott's powers in WCW when this theme came about.
Yeah, that is some fun imagery in that song.
And he was a fun character at the time where, I mean, 3 Count would come out to the ring and do their thing, and guys would try to mock them or take them down a peg, and then all of a sudden Tank Abbott would appear and just like knock them the fuck out. Like he took 3 Count very seriously in a way that nobody else did. In a way, it did delegitimize Tank Abbott as a character, but at the same time, who gives a flying fuck about Tank Abbott, you know?
I've been watching Friends this year on Netflix. I never really watched it before, but I actually started about the same time, like a year ago, and now I'm on season 7. But anyways, there was an episode where this guy, Jon Favreau, the guy that's like directing movies now and stuff, he was on Friends, and he was the boyfriend of Courtney Cox's character, and he was trying to get into MMA, and his opponent was actually Tank Abbott, and I big popped in my living room.
I was wondering how Tank Abbott figured into a Friends anecdote.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
But
I guess he made a lot of money then, but between the Friends money and the WCW money around the same time period. I mean, I hope he made the most of that. I really do. I hope he's sitting pretty nowadays.
Glenn, have you ever viewed anything with Tank Abbott?
Very, very little.
That actually does it for all of the theme music from CDs and otherwise acquired online. But there is like a huge list. I think Tim and I were discussing this, of all of the kind of borrowed music where WCW had borrowed from like pop songs like we've discussed already. Are there any that you have that have come to mind since that discussion a couple weeks ago?
Okay, well, in terms of just WCW production music / knockoff themes, there is a large list. And some of the more notable ones that come to mind, of course, are the biggest, I think, in anyone's mind would be DDP's Smells Like Teen Spirit / Self High Five, right? Along the same lines, Raven, when he finally got instrumental, actual WCW entrance music, was Come As You Are by Nirvana, which is a really chill, really cool version of that song, actually, that I think needs to be heard, to be experienced, because you think, okay, it's just a WCW knockoff, whatever, Come As You Are, Nirvana, but it works so very well for that character. Canyon evidently had two knockoff theme songs. The one that I remember the most was Round and Round from Rat.
I don't remember that.
Well, if you listen to the Canyon theme music from, again, WCW, just that opening riff sounds pretty much the same as that.
Maybe that's the one that's on the WWE music of WCW, because they have a Canyon one on there, and I kind of like it because it starts with that eerie Mortis music, and then it morphs into the rock riff. Is that the one you're talking about with the kind of lifted rat?
Yeah, I think so, because the Mortis theme was definitely distinct from that, and definitely its own thing, which was really cool, actually. I like the Mortis theme. But for a while, you would hear like the first few beats of that, and then it would go into like the Canyon theme proper. So I think for sure that's what would have been on the CD that you're referencing.
There's one that you had said is they kind of lifted a song by Boston, and it's Jerry Flynn. And so I am not sure of what it is reminiscent of, but maybe Glenn could help out too. So here is the Jerry Flynn song.
It's Boston's Peace of Mind. I went through some back and forth over whether it was peace of mind or more than a feeling, but hearing it now, it's definitely peace of mind. I don't know why they chose that for Jerry Flynn, who was a WCW D-list jobber at best, but that's what it is. I mean, listen to Peace of Mind back to back with that song, and it's pretty much the same thing.
Glenn, did you think it sounds like Boston?
It sounded very much like Boston. I couldn't pin down which song off the top of my head, but Tim, I'll take your word for that.
Well, then, mystery solved. It does have a very like classic rock vibe to it.
Yeah, listen to Peace of Mind. I promise you it's the same song. Of course, you had Eddie Guerrero's, not his first theme, but I think probably his second, which is totally Lowrider, right? Just a little bit slowed down instrumental version of that. Pretty iconic, but here again, something that unfortunately you will not hear on the network. At least the last time I heard an Eddie Guerrero WCW theme on the network. I kind of hope they get these rights ironed out.
I think maybe they used it for Chavo a little bit when he was doing like Chavo Classic, right? When he had his father with him as a cruiserweight. Or am I like mishearing things? But I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've
Glenn,
watched.
when you started watching wrestling, do you remember Chavo Guerrero's WWE theme music at all?
At the time that I started watching, Chavo already had his regular theme that he had for the rest of his WWE career, and I think by the time I started watching, Chavo Classic was no longer a factor.
Oh, he was like the one guy that was like a golfer or something, and he was on Raw, wasn't he? He was like
Kerwin White, yeah.
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 Oh, I was going to say Perry White, but I think he's on Superman.
Kerwin White was an entirely different entity.
All right.
Yeah, Kerwin White was another character that whose tenure got cut off rather suddenly.
Glenn, here's one that I actually mentioned before we began recording, that you actually might be able to help in like telling us where this piece of music is from. But remember earlier in the show, too, we talked about Alex Wright. He was repackaged as a character called Berlin. And it was kind of short-lived, but his bodyguard, who was the Wall, he kind of had like a little run of his own. And so here's the theme song for Berlin.
Oh, yes. Yes. That is not the piece itself, but it's a takeoff on the piece O Fortuna from the opera Carmina Burana by composer Karl Orff that people will know from the many, many movie trailers it's been used in. It's been used as a stand-in for apocalyptic music, and it's inspired a large amount of large-scale apocalyptic-sounding music in films. I believe it was also tracked into the movie Excalibur in its entirety. And another similar takeoff on that piece was used at the end of Glory when they're charging when they're in battle. So, yeah, that is definitely a recognizable inspiration.
Yes, thank you, Glenn, because I knew that you would have the answer for that.
Glenn, you're so fucking brilliant. This is why we needed you for this episode, because we would not have been able to pin down any of that.
The interesting thing about that version, I think, is the use of the women's choir, because most of the versions you hear are mixed choir, which has obviously a lot more baritone in the men's section, or just a men's choir. And so having just the women's choir in that version, I think is pretty cool.
Very good. Unfortunately, probably better than the character that it was used to represent.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
That's WCW being WCW. Speaking of Germans, there were a couple of knockoff themes from the Scorpions, were there not, Andy?
There was one that I had in my head, but I guess apparently I didn't write it down. But I think somebody used Rock You Like a Hurricane in the late 90s period. But the one that I do know is really early, and it was Sid. Mm-hmm. He used the Scorpions. It was China White, and it's a distinct
China White for Sid.
Yeah, it's
exactly.
A distinct chugging, dun 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 dun, like that.
Yep. The other one from the Scorpions was for Hugh Morris, of all people, the Zoo.
Oh, that's the one that's on the Hugh Morris one that's on the WWE music release. I knew it was familiar. All right, so thank you.
Probably not the only two, though, like you said.
There is one that's Jeff Jarrett. He used Cowboy from Kid Rock, which I listened to, I think, yesterday or today. I pulled up his version on YouTube, and I actually kind of like it. It sounds like Cowboy, but they kind of tweaked it a little bit. It was decent.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm not crazy about the Kid Rock version of that song, as I'm not crazy about anything that Kid Rock does, but it sort of worked for Jarrett, didn't it?
Here's another one that is on the list. I put it on a list of ripoffs, but I think it's early enough where they just used the music the way it was in this movie. And it's one that Glenn might know, too. Terry Funk used it in '89 when he was a heel. Now, is that actually the exact music, or is it like a replica?
That's not an exact piece that I recall off the top of my head. What was it that you thought it was?
It's the man with the harmonica from that, I think, Once Upon a Time in the West, Morricone.
Oh, yeah, it definitely sounds like one of the Morricone Western scores. Yeah, that harmonica sure is harsh. I'm not as familiar with those scores as I could be, but it's definitely reminiscent.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was on your film score, like Radar, or not, from the Westerns.
Westerns aren't really on my radar as much.
It sounds so creepy and so sinister. To be honest, I don't remember hearing that at all for Terry Funk, which, again, leads me to believe it's just been dubbed over on the network. So if that's what he was actually using circa 1989, then good on him, because wow, that's very befitting of his character.
Yeah, because I forgot about it until like maybe a couple months ago when we were getting ready for the show. And I put on a DVD I have, because I actually bought, like, off eBay, like, years ago, the Great American Bash 89, like, the Turner video, and I dubbed it to DVD, and I wanted to watch, I think it was the Sting and Muta match, and then I kept the DVD going, and they have Funk and Flair for the title, and Funk comes out, and they play that music, and I'm like, that is, yeah, it's eerie, it's creepy, and it like fits like a heel like that, because he's kind of like, you know, from Texas, and it kind of fits the Western vibe too.
Hell yeah.
There's another one I jotted down, which is an obvious one. Prince Iaukea, when he was like repackaged as the artist.
Oh, the artist. Yeah. It was Purple Rain,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, he had a version of that. It was basically just instrumental Purple Rain.
Yes, and he was an awful performer and an awful character, and what a waste of a great song.
Well, when we shared this episode's topic with Glenn, I had asked a question. What are your overall like top 5 favorite theme songs? Not even just WCW, but overall WWF, on whichever promotion. So I guess, Glenn, you're the guest. Do you have any you'd like to share that are your top 5 overall like favorite theme music?
Oh, goodness gracious. Despite my reservations, I mean, it begins and ends with Real American, right?
Mm.
We did a wrestling theme song tournament at the Place to Be Nation about a year and a half ago, something like that. And Real American ran away with it overwhelmingly. It was the number 1 seed, and it just ran through the whole bracket. We had a whole mess of songs in that one. What else is there to say about it, right? I mean, it symbolizes everything that Hulk Hogan is, and maybe everything that Hulk Hogan is. So that one, I think you have to have in any list like that. Otherwise, I mean, there are a bunch of entrance themes that you just instantly identify with a person and just instantly tells you what you need to know about that character, right? Even instrumental ones like The Ultimate Warrior. You know, it is just instantly telling you what that character is. Otherwise, I have a few maybe a little
So your 4 through 1 are kind of a toss-up. Is that what I'm getting
at? Well, I'm not going in strict order here. I really love Zack Ryder's song "Oh Radio," the first version that he had until earlier this year.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
I think that has the benefit of being a legitimately good song, which frankly, some wrestling themes really don't. And we've highlighted a couple of them today.
Mm-hmm.
Also, in the category of a legitimately good song, the Evolution song by Motorhead.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
that's a good one.
And of course, I mean, I can't think of theme songs without Dusty Rhodes' "The American Dream." You know?
Yeah, with his polka dots.
Yes. What are you thankful for? My polka dots.
Absolutely.
I was actually hoping, Glenn, that your top 5, or maybe among them, would be when William Shatner was like riffing on the Triple H.
Oh my
and
God.
Sexy Boy. You remember that?
When he did Sexy Boy and Booyaka 619. Oh yes, that was amazing.
Boo you.
Well, you have
Booyaka.
you clearly have to revise your list now.
Well, you know what? This is the sort of list that is greatly dependent on the mood that you're in and what you're thinking of at that particular moment. I tend not to hold fast and true to a list that I make, in a particular moment, because I figure if I really say this is my definitive list of this thing, then, the camera's going to pan out and Rod Serling is going to be talking about me because I'm on a desert island and those are the only songs I have.
That's a very good point. Absolutely. I guess, Andy, if you're going to present the same question to me, then I approach this with somewhat limited criteria in that I feel like, number one, a wrestling theme song should, above all else, stir something within you, whether that's excitement or fear or curiosity. Number two, it should say something about the character in question. Number three, it should help get this character over. When you think about entrance music, something that gets lost along the way a lot of times is that this might be your introduction to the character. That might be your first impression. In all honesty, what's going to serve as your introduction, your first impression of the character, I kind of give bonus points for originality, right? So Glenn gave a great example of that with Zack Ryder's theme of "Oh Radio." Where else are you going to hear something like that? That is a truly original professional wrestling theme song. So, and there's various degrees of originality for certain. So if I had to bring it down to a top 5, it was really tough for me. It's a very malleable list. It's subject to change, subject to mood. But as of this particular moment in this recording, my number 5 would be the original Gold Dust theme, which I think hits on a lot of the check boxes that I identified. It sounds just fucking bombastic and epic, and the presentation that accompanies that character gets him over so much, gives you a great first impression. It's very catchy, tells you a lot about this character that you don't necessarily know a whole lot about from the outset. My number 4 would be the original NWO theme. Not terribly original in that it borrows from basically a lot of different Jimi Hendrix riffs. Is just so iconic for that group. As watered down as they became as a faction, the theme song itself, I feel like, never really got old. So that still to this day stirs something within me. Along the same lines, my number 3, the Horseman theme. I was kind of torn between their sort of mid 90s to, I guess, 1997 breakup theme song of, I think, was a composition by Jimmy Hart called Coast, sort of 80s throwback type of song. Made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And you couple that with their return in 1998, pretty much the same idea and the same theme song, but you had like the horse gallops at the beginning of it, and it was a little bit more pepped up, I guess. So that brings me to my number 2, which, Andy, you're gonna hate, and you can call me out for this, but I'm gonna go ahead and put it out there. I went back and forth on this, but it's still my number 2, and that goes to Triple H, My Time.
Yeah, 99, kind of when he was with China and going after the title.
Yep.
Right?
China used it as well. I think Stephanie used it on occasion too. I don't know. I was really into Triple H during this time period. That heel character for Triple H, I was all in on. Now, I would certainly sour on that as the months and the years progressed, but I mean, taking it back to like late 1999 to early 2000 when he adopted this particular song, I was fucking into it. And during a period of my life where I was a little bit, this is going to sound so corny, but where I was into like self-improvement and actually exercising, working out, trying to better myself, this was and remains to this day a great workout song. I don't know. I put it up there because it gets my blood pumping.
And you're probably just trying to suck up to Scott so we can get him on as a guest, right?
I knew you were going to say that. I really am not. I mean, I genuinely, sincerely love this theme song. I just do. So my number 1, I think I will redeem myself with this, is the Jake the Snake Roberts, not his more recognizable face theme, but his heel theme song of Trust Me. It's not, I would say, appreciably different from his face song, but they kind of invert it musically and thematically in a way that, I don't know, just puts a very different and a very appropriate spin. It's certainly more sinister and befitting of him as the character that he adopted at that point. And it's not something that is too far removed from maybe like a Michael Mann or John Carpenter theme of that same time period, where it's like it owes a lot to 80s synth music, I feel like, or synth soundtracks. I will defend that to the death, but I don't think I will have a lot of competition in that vein.
Dang, you really dug deep for a lot of those and really thought through your picks.
This was tough. This was a difficult exercise for me. So, Andy, I'm very interested to hear what you came up with.
Well, I sent you a text the other day when I asked if you'd put your list together, and I said that mine are very typical, and I think they pretty much are, and they kind of overlapped with you slightly, or at least what you mentioned, because I'm not going to put them in any order, but I have Rick Rude out of Simply Ravishing that I played earlier, because, like, I don't know, it's just cool. Like, it's got, like, a cool riff, and, like, the girl singing, it's kind of like it does sum up the character, and it sounds like it could actually be like a real song. And
yeah, I'm glad that you listed it. I had a feeling you would, so I felt better not including it in mine.
It's just a shame that he wasn't even around that long where he had the theme. I think it was just 93 into 94, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's like a real short period of his career. And then another one that I have listed is one you had mentioned it, but you disqualified it. It was the DDP theme song in WCW, because even when I hear Nirvana, I always just think self high five. It's always going to be DDP.
That's the thing. Yeah, I kind of, when I hear that song, at this point I think of it more as DDP's entrance music than I do a Nirvana song, which it's kind of crazy because they're the same thing, right? And
the other I have is one that you actually did mention, the classic NWO theme, because I don't know, it's classic. Another one I have is Stone Cold Steve Austin, because he's always been one of my favorites, but it's just a cool piece of music, because it's one of those things like, you guys were talking about songs that are linked to the character, and it's like you hear that glass break, and like Stone Cold Steve Austin is going to like charge out and whip ass, and even in the Rumble, it would always just pop the crowd so loud hearing the glass break, and he'd come out, fire off the stunners. And then my number 5 would be one that I liked a lot when I was a teenager, because they had The Undertaker, the kind of symphony music, and then he did like a transformation and he became a darker character in the Attitude Era, and he had the one with the guitar riff, so they like rocked out his old theme music. They updated it a little bit, and yeah.
Oh yeah, that one was so cool.
So that's my 5 right there: Rick Rude, DDP, NWO, Undertaker, and Stone Cold.
And that's in no particular order, you said?
Oh, no, like I couldn't put them in an order, so I was just like, I'm just going to have 5. But
yeah, I struggled with that too, for sure.
It was a really fun show, guys. Glenn, I'm glad we had you on tonight.
Thanks a lot for having me. Always great to talk to you guys.
And it's cool because you two guys are like the two guys that outside of family members, like my grandma, like I probably talk to you guys the most in my life. So it's nice to actually be able to talk to both of you at once.
That's very touching, and I would definitely love to hear your grandma's favorite WCW or WWF entrance themes as well.
She'd probably
in
like,
no particular order.
She'd probably like the Wonderful one too, I assume.
I feel like she'd be partial to at least one of the Alex Wright themes as well.
No, really, I think that's actually what Survey Says is more about. It's kind of like we use WCW as an excuse to talk with our friends. So I'm glad that, Glenn, you were able to come on. And I feel like this has been a very long show. We've had some fun with theme music, but I think it's time to wrap it up. Would you say, Tim?
Yes, I would agree that it has been a springboard for togetherness, but the occasion is probably coming to a close. So we're winding down, and I will let you take us out at this point.
Thank you, Tim. And now, Glenn, you are actually back and ready to release more episodes of your Spectacular podcast. Is that right?
Yes, indeed. I am back in the saddle on the Glenn Butler podcast, Our Spectacular. We had an episode recently about politics, because I felt like I couldn't go on without at least acknowledging our impending doom. But we've got episodes on tap about Star Wars, because there's a new movie, and other topics as well. We're going to have those coming up as recordings warrant and as subjects warrant. So I'm glad to be back in with that.
All right, great, because I've actually missed your show a lot, and so I'm looking forward to all the new episodes.
Me too.
Well, I appreciate that, guys.
We are out of time. We have to throw to TNT's airing of Monster Vision and They Live tonight.
Oh, sounds like a very good choice. Looking forward to that.
You guys will always be my wrestle buddies.
Aww.
Wrestle buddies or Thunder buddies as we almost were.
All right, we'll talk to you guys next time on Survey Says.